Welcome into episode number 13.
Lucky number 13.
Cashin The Check. I am your host, Tyler Asher from the Small Business Development Center.
And I am your co-host, Tiffany Anton from The Biz Foundry.
Well, today...
I think that we've got some heavy topics lately, but I'm excited. We got a guest on today.
We got a guest on today, none other than the Deputy Director for the Upper Cumberland Development District, Tommy Lee, will be joining us very shortly to talk about planning and zoning and why that's important if you're a business owner and why that protects you as a business owner. Because a lot of times people, when they hear like, oh, that you got to go to the planning board or zone, they like flip out.
They get afraid. And then in the drinking the Kool-aid, we're going to talk about some fears and what holds you back.
So if you're watching this, comment what some of your fears are as far as like business.
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because your fears are different than mine.
Right. And if you do have fears, then come talk to us. Shameless plug.
Oh, that's terrible. Hey, Luke, will you get that Indeed posting up for a new co-host?
I don't think he actually works for us personally. I think he just produces a podcast for us. So I think that's
I'm still waiting for a mute button.
I'm still waiting for my
your duck button.
Yeah, my duck quack 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 quack. So one thing when you talked about having Tommy on, so I have recently joined the Planning Commission in Allgood, and so I've learned a lot more about zoning and businesses and all that kind of stuff. And so one thing that I find interesting is that there could be a kennel business next door to my house in a neighborhood. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on, but there's 11 to 13 dogs there. And that's a lot.
Let's just ask this. If you have a family, how many dogs is too many? Because we got 3. I think 3 is too many. I think 3 is the perfect number.
The perfect number. I think that it might depend on size of dogs. Like if you have little Percy yappy dogs are probably...
Yippy dogs, yeah.
3.
We got a little Shih Tzu, and then we have 2 Aussie Doodles.
I have 2 cats. Listen, cats are low maintenance. I can't. Sometimes I work. It's really interesting to me. I feel like we're going down a dog animal tangent, but when I had a baby and people were like, "Oh, we're gonna go out to dinner," and it's like, okay, I can take my baby with me. But then I would be with friends that had dogs, and they're like, "We have to go home so we can let our dog out." Like dogs constrict you more than babies do, and definitely more than cats.
I love our dogs. So for us, it's just a totally different. I mean, they're like part of the family. I
feel similar to dogs, how I feel about children. I love other people's.
Just don't love your own.
I mean,
but I enjoy embarrassing.
Oh, ours. I do. Wait. I love my children. I just don't want any more. I didn't mean it like that. I don't want any more children. I love to go to other people's houses, and my next door neighbors have an something doodle. I mean, it's huge. It literally can put his paws on my shoulders, and he loves me.
Let's jump in this real quick. We're talking about we have a business podcast.
Yeah.
What about animals in a business? Real quick.
Bringing your dog to work.
Bringing your dog to work. Do you think that's like part of me is like from the insurance side that I spent so long, I'm like, oh, it's a liability. But part of me is like, oh, but people love it.
I don't. Jeff actually, he got a new dog, and he said he was going to bring this dog to work, and it was
that dog is like hyper.
I was excited. I like to bring my cats into my office sometimes. But I have a private office, so in a co-working space, I do not think a dog would be appropriate.
There's a CDFI that we work with down in Chattanooga, and they have like an office dog. Like this lady brings her dog to work every day, and it visits like everybody in the morning, and then it they all feed it and take care, which I think is kind of cool.
I do think that there is a morale booster to having dogs or animals in the workplace. I think that can help.
Hey, come see my pet boa.
Yeah. Or just I mean, we might have. Yeah,
Then we'll have to do an episode about that.
About dogs in the workplace. That might be a good, let me make a little note on that.
Dogs in the workplace. How about that? Let us know comments what you think dogs in the workplace, if that would be appropriate, or I don't even know. Is that, I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's just
we'll
me.
talk. Well, I mean, we dipped on the surface there of it, but we'll dive deeper.
All right.
It's time for me to get kicked out.
You're getting moved away.
All right.
Kicking you out. Let's get Tommy Lee in here from the Upper Cumberland Development District. We're going to talk about planning and zoning. So
see you later.
See you later. We're in the big picture segment of our podcast, and I am honored to have this stud of a guy next to me. I get to work with him on a daily basis. He is the planner for 9 counties, 6 cities. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Married, has 3 kids, and I will tell you, he is an incredible musician. So, Tommy Lee, thank you for coming and doing this podcast today.
You're very welcome, Tyler. Check's in the mail for you, buddy.
All right. Hey, listen, you have opened up for some pretty big people.
Yeah, just recently we opened up for Aaron Tippin in Livingston, and it was a great thrill. So
that's awesome.
Very cool.
Absolutely. Well, so I brought Tommy in because Tommy does a lot of planning and zoning for counties and cities, and so if you're a business, this is actually a pretty important thing because you don't want to go do something and then someone say, actually, you can't because it says you can't. So I'm just going to jump right in.
Sure.
And so, Tommy, let's say I'm a business owner and I want to get started. Why is having something along the lines of planning and zoning, why is that important for a business?
So I guess for those that are getting started, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're someone who's already established and you're looking to either buy a vacant piece of property and build a structure and put a business in it, or you want to buy an existing structure, the worst thing that you can do is assume that what you're wanting to do is allowed.
Right.
You need to do your due diligence before you buy a piece of property or buy a building. So, for example, if you're buying an existing building, you should go down to City Hall or the county executive's office and see if there are any outstanding code violations or any fines that are associated with that building, because typically things like that they carry over with the property. So
Gotcha.
Just because the business sells doesn't mean that those things go away.
Correct.
You should also check the zoning requirements, because what the zoning does is it regulates the types of uses that are allowed. And so you may think that you want to open a bakery, and if your property is not zoned for that, then you won't be able to do that. It might be zoned for residential use or industrial use or agricultural use. So you need to check with the zoning. A couple of other things that you need to check into is check and see if you're going to need a site plan, especially if you are building a building.
Gotcha.
Because the site plan is the layout. It doesn't have anything to do with what your outside looks like, but it shows your footprint, it shows your parking, and it shows how you're going to get in and out of the property.
Right, because the last thing you want to do is go build something, and then you don't have that, and then you get some people, like from where we're at in Tennessee, you get what we call TDEC. They would then get involved, or you get those other government agencies involved,
yeah.
and you didn't do your due diligence, and then your project either is put on hold, or worse is, slashed, or they tell you can't do it.
I mean, we have seen people that have bought property or have bought a building get so far down the road, and they haven't checked with the building inspector or the codes department in the municipality that they're wanting to open the business, and then they find out they can't do what they want to do.
Right.
So doing that due diligence is very important.
If you were a business owner, is that something that your general contractor should know? Like if you're building a building, or is that something that you as the business owner, you should also check behind your general contractor as well, or do a little bit of both?
Well, I mean, the general contractor should, but what if the general contractor's not from the area
right.
that you're working in? They may know the codes from where they're from, but they may not know the codes where you're wanting to build the building. And so, I mean, as a business owner, the buck stops with you.
Right.
And so
it's your baby.
That's correct. And so you should make sure that you check with, your local government to make sure that you're meeting all the requirements.
I love it.
Yeah.
So let's jump on the other side. Let's jump on the other side of this. As a business owner, why would you want planning and zoning ordinances in place?
Yeah, so a lot of people look at planning and zoning as property right restriction or property value restriction. I look at it as property value protection, because yes, planning and zoning, they do restrict what you can do, but more importantly than that, they restrict what your neighbor can do.
Right.
And so, example, we'll go back to our bakery example. You open a bakery, you don't want somebody putting in a slaughterhouse or a kennel
right.
or something like that that's going to combat what you're doing.
Right.
And also, property maintenance codes with regards to that, yeah, they're going to make sure that you keep your property up, but more importantly, they're going to make sure that your neighbors keep, their property up, because nothing can drive property values down than a neighbor who has a bunch of junk cars on there or has their yard that's grown up, things like that. So planning and zoning, from the perspective of the government, why they adopt these things is protection.
Gotcha. What about, let's talk about some people, because we see this a lot, people who have like a home-based business.
Yeah.
Do a lot of like planning and zoning codes, do they allow for that? Or are some very strict in that? Like, hey, you cannot have a home-based business, or you can, it's up to a certain limit. Or does it go back to protection of the other property owners? Let's talk a little bit about like home-based businesses, because we see a lot of that in the state.
Well, when a lot of these zoning ordinances were written, the internet was not a thing. And so, strictly online businesses were not taken into account when these zoning ordinances were adopted. So every place is different. In some places, home-based businesses, and when I say home-based businesses, that's a business that's actually in the home that takes up less than half of the floor space.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you couldn't have your full retail operation in the structure, but like if you wanted to do it out of your garage or out of a couple of rooms in the house, that's a home-based business for most cities. And so some places allow it as a permitted use. Some places allow it as a conditional use, which means you have to go in front of a board and present your plan.
Gotcha.
And then they determine based upon, how high of an impact you're going to have, whether or not to allow you to do that. And so, and then some places just don't allow it at all. So it just really depends on where you're at. But again, this is for protection, because if you have a business where you're selling, let's say you're selling clothes out of your home, you could potentially have lots of traffic coming in and out of your
residence.
home. Yeah, out of your residence. And if you live in a highly densely populated area, that could provide some problems.
Yeah, I always think of like neighborhoods and kids. My kids always like playing in the street.
Sure.
Or, we have a neighborhood, and so kids are all the time playing in the street. So I think that's nice to know that those are there for protection, both you as a business owner and as the citizen that owns the property.
Yeah, especially if you're making something.
Gotcha.
So because you can not only, it's not only traffic, it's also noise, it's also odor, it's also things like that could potentially, cause a disruption. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's good to know. I think sometimes as a business owner, you get in the grind of trying to do things and make money, that there are these little things that we oftentimes forget to check. It's just a simple phone call most of the time of, hey, I'm doing this. Is this allowed? What I need to do?
Well, most home-based businesses, let me start over. Home-based businesses, they all have different impacts.
Correct.
And so most places you will see that home-based businesses are what's called a conditional use, where you have to go in front of a board, you have to present your case, have to talk to your neighbors to make sure that you're not going to be, negatively impacting them. So, most of the time, so if you're going to start a home-based business, again, let's go back to your due diligence. Go to that local government. Make sure that you're allowed to do what you want to do.
I like it. So let's talk about your over the last few years. You've probably seen we've seen a lot of growth here in the Upper Cumberland.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about how that has impacted what you do.
Well, you just see a lot more influx of people wanting to move here. You see a lot of subdivision plats, which basically lay out residential development, and we've just seen a big influx in those things. And for the locals, what that means is more, for the local government, it means more property tax. It means more sales tax collections if you're opening a business.
Yep.
So the growth, especially around Cookeville and in the outskirts of Putnam County, like Allgood and Baxter, we've just seen a tremendous, tremendous amount of growth in those areas over the past, let's just say, 5 years.
That's awesome. We're getting ready to wrap up, and I love asking our guests this question: is what's your favorite part of your job?
Easy. That is so easy. I have to tell people no so many times. My favorite thing about my job is when I get to tell somebody yes, and I get to help them, and I get to maybe make a dream come true or help them make a dream come true. So that's very easy.
I could see you telling people no a lot, especially in planning and zoning.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, you can't do that. Right. Well, I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know how busy you are, so thank you for coming and talking to us about planning, zoning, why it's important as a business, why it protects you as a business. So thank you for doing that. I sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Tommy Lee, for stopping by and talking to us about planning and zoning. It's such a vital part of owning a business.
For sure.
But also, let's jump right into
drinking. Where's oh, come on.
I drank all my coffee. Sorry. Drinking the Kool-Aid. We're going to talk about fears. And I think that it hits business owners differently. I think that, we've had this conversation. What fears you have in business would be different fears than I have in business.
And I think that this goes along with Tommy's role
absolutely.
So well, because I think that people will say, what if they tell me no? If I go ask for permission and they tell me no, what if they tell me no? And so their fears don't allow them to take the proper steps. And then it's like you can get yourself into a bad situation.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that fears for some people are different than they are for certain business owners. So some people have a fear of like borrowing money.
For sure.
I see that a lot of times because people are like, well, I don't want to borrow any money. Why don't you want to borrow any money? Well, I got to pay it back. Well, what's the worst that could happen? That's the way I try to present it is if you borrow money and your business grows.
Yeah.
Then if you don't borrow money, you may never grow.
If you borrow money, though, like you're really saying, I believe in myself and I believe in what I'm doing.
And I hear that, too, because people are always like, well, I'm not putting my house up for it. Well, why would you expect someone to loan you money if you don't believe in it?
Yeah.
If you believe in this business, why wouldn't you be willing to put up some assets and some collateral? Because what makes you think a bank's going to give you money if you don't believe in it? Well, I'm not willing to give my house up for it.
Well, I could believe in my business, but I believe in my providing for my family more. And so I think that there is a scale of fears, some that are debilitating and some that won't allow you to go forward of that, borrowing money from people or giving people ownership. Ooh, that's a good one too. That could be a whole separate topic.
And I hear that a lot too because people are always like, well, I don't want to have investors or I don't want to give up ownership.
Oh my gosh. We could go, let's not go into that tangent because
we better make a note of that.
Yeah.
That'll be
investors.
Another episode.
But
Holy smokes.
So what I think that, do you think that there gets to be a point in your career or your business that you stop having fears? So I think there's a lot more fears, I think, when you start out.
I think that is what I talk to a lot of people about is, as I feel like as a business, if you are not uncomfortable as a business owner, you aren't growing. So to me, when people become unfearful of their business, they're complacent. Mm-hmm. From where I'm at, I always try to keep one foot out. So I'm always growing. I'm always a little uncomfortable. Because to me, when you're uncomfortable, you do some things. You may do a little extra research. You may run an idea by somebody. You may go a few extra steps on doing things because you are a little fearful. If you've done it this way for 20 years and you're comfortable with it, I think that you minimize the fear because you're so ingrained in it that you like, well, I've done it for so long this way. I'm not, it's fine. It'll be okay.
So both of us work in positions where we offer resources. We help business owners. So there are people who think that they don't need our resources. They don't need our help. They don't want the connections that we can make for them. Do you think that they have deeper, bigger fears than the people who are like, yes, give me all the help, give me all the information?
I think that,
and they just don't want to tap into that.
I think that people try to put up a good front. Mm-hmm. And I will say this as a male, I think men are probably the worst.
I was going to say, is it one or the other? We've talked about gender issues a lot.
I think that men, they don't want to ask for help because it shows like a weakness is personally what I think. That to where maybe female will ask for it because they are a little more fearful of not knowing certain ways to do things or certain connections. And so for me as a male, now I'm a little different. I say this, I'm always willing to talk about it or ask for help or go meet with somebody if I don't understand how something works or if I do have a fear.
It's interesting. So this is kind of a tangent, but we had that marketing special sauce. Andrew Holiday came in this summer, and of the 65 people that were there, 45 of them or 50 of them
I would say
women.
90% were women.
Yeah. And so, and there was definitely some conversation. Is it because we promoted mainly to women? Is it because women are the ones that are doing the marketing? Is it because women are the ones that will say, hey, I don't know this, help me?
Yes.
So it was kind of interesting of why.
I don't really know the answer to that question, but I think that is a very logical, like, sound. I really don't know what to say, because most women do ask for help, I feel like, and most men don't. And maybe it is a fear. Maybe it's a fear of
trusting in themselves. Maybe it's a little bit of that, is that women don't trust in themselves, and so they're afraid to.
I think men have this. I feel like men have a stigma of, like, I'm supposed to have it all figured out.
Yeah, that the tough macho
the fear of not having it. Someone's going to look at me like I'm weak and I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't need to ask for help. I'll just figure it out. When realistically, if you would have asked like 2 questions, you would have been so much further down the road than having to figure it out the hard way or learn the hard way. I mean, I did that. I didn't ask about a couple things, and I had to learn the hard way, and I won't lie, it stinks.
Well, and I would say that it is interesting, because men don't want to ask because they're afraid that they'll look weak. And I think sometimes women don't want to just do because they're afraid they're going to look weak. Yeah. We were just talking about this business owner that she's just like, she goes all out, but she for the first 6 months, she would always say, well, I don't do marketing. I don't know social media. And I'm like, stop. You know, she would say, I'm a physical therapist. I'm not a business owner. And I'm like, but you are. So stop saying those things. Yeah. And she was just so afraid.
I get it too, where people are like, I'm not in sales. You're always in sales.
Yeah.
Even in my role, working for a government entity, I'm still kind of in sales.
Yeah.
You know, I'm out presenting what we do right now. This is a sales. Yeah. And so people think that, like, sales is the old, like, door-to-door vacuum cleaner, or you're talking about Ned, the insurance salesman off of Groundhog's Day. Oh, yeah. So that's what I think people equate to sales, when really sales is just talking to people about what you believe in your product.
I got so, like, lost on this Ned thing. So he was an insurance sales guy, I think.
Yeah.
And so is that how you used to, like?
No, I did not.
Approach people on the street, like?
No, I did not do that. I try to go back, and what I talk to clients about now is, yes, you may not want to be in sales, but you have to be in sales. And it's not so much nearly telling and that's a legitimate fear. People are like, well, I'm not in sales, I don't want to talk to people. Well, your company's never going to grow anywhere unless you hire someone that believes in your product, your company, the way that you do.
Wants to tell people, yeah.
And wants to tell people about it.
And
there's
let
nothing
me just
wrong
stop
with that.
you. You said the way that you do, that feels about your company. No one is ever going to feel about your company the way you do. But you're hopefully going to surround yourself, and you can trust at some point, because that is scary to let go of some control to hire somebody in. But Meg's Bread down the street, I walked in there the other day, and she had, 10 employees in there. And she had to learn that she could train other people. They could be on the forefront. She had to learn how to run her business and not just bake bread.
Well, we talk about this too, and I think that talking about our subject of fear, people are so fearful that they aren't going to do it right, and they'll just do it themselves, and they end up just working themselves down a rabbit hole. Or we see this all the time. People just create a job for themselves instead of working on their business and putting people in those positions and training them correctly to be able to perform at the same quality or close enough to the same quality that they would.
I was interviewing somebody at one point, and she mentioned indecision prison. And I thought, wow, that's such a good, strong way to think about it, is that your fears can just put you in a place where you don't even move forward. You don't go anywhere.
Well, we could talk about, like, in our previous episode, we're talking about, like, employers just making a decision when it comes to, like, vaccine or COVID stuff. Like, sometimes as a business owner, the best decision you can make is just a decision, whether it's the wrong decision, but sometimes just making a decision.
Progress over perfection.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just gonna
that's a fear.
Bust them all out today.
My favorite analogy when it comes to fear, or I think we're going to talk about this in a future episode, is failing.
Yeah.
You know, for me, failing is first attempt at learning.
Yeah.
You know, if you failed at something, no, you didn't really fail. You just learned in probably a hard way. I'm not going to say it may be a hard lesson to learn, but that's also a fear for people. They don't want to fail. They think that failing it looks bad or does things. Look at like someone like Grant Cardone, who went through like addiction and all the, filed bankruptcy and all that stuff, and now he's this billionaire real estate mogul and does very well for himself.
A muggle like Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Like
or you look at like someone like Dave Ramsey. Like there's a lot of things with Dave that I like, and there's a lot of things that I totally disagree with his philosophy.
Yeah.
But he said, I filed bankruptcy. He's done all this stuff, and to make it where he is now, sometimes you have to fail, and failing is okay. There's nothing wrong with being fearful of failing.
Well, and back to kind of what Tommy Lee talked about and zoning things. So like I said, I am on the planning commission for the city of Allgood, and there was a business that they were building something, and they thought that their contractor had went and got the new site plans approved, and they had not. And so they had to come to the in front of the board and say, we messed up, and can you approve this now, even though we've already done some of this work? And it wasn't the end of the world. And so I think that's a big thing with fears too, is like, okay, well, I messed up. Now I don't know how to fix it. So I'm just going to sit in indecision prison. I'm going to just sit here and hope nobody, put my blinders on and hope nobody sees that I screwed up. But then it's like, okay, well, when you do it, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
Maybe you have to pay some sort of fine. Maybe you have to get a slap on the wrist. But at the end of the day, your business is not destroyed. It's going to be thriving.
I think sometimes people are fearful for asking for forgiveness when they make a mistake in a business,
you love to ask for forgiveness.
I love to ask for forgiveness.
If
you know me, you know that I'm an ask for forgiveness, not permission kind of person.
I think you've influenced me on that a little bit. Is that
I think I have. I've talked to a couple other people who have been around me a lot lately, and they're like, oh, you rub off on me. I'm like, because sometimes I feel like you've got to make a decision right then. Mm-hmm. And we talk about this in prior episodes in business. Sometimes you have to make a decision kind of on the fly, and it's got to be quick. You don't get time to think about it or ask about it. You've got to make a decision. And sometimes not making a decision is the wrong decision. Yeah. But sometimes making a decision can impact you one way or the other. And it may be the wrong decision. I've said this before.
Well, and I think that the thing that as whatever position you're in, because you're usually sort of answering to somebody. You're sort of answering, maybe it's regulations but you make a decision. And now, at least in our situation, we do have bosses that they put us in this position to make the decisions that we need to make on the fly. And
I'm gonna throw shade under talking about university segments. I'm not gonna call it any in particular, but sometimes people in the university setting are the worst about that. I would tell them if they were here right now, y'all are the worst at making decisions. You
have more power than I do, so I'm gonna just.
Well, I just because sometimes when you do a certain especially in the university world, it's like, well, we can't make that decision, and I'm like, can someone just say yes, no, just give me something.
I think that even just to get the approval for this podcast, I think was it. You're like, well, I don't know. I asked this person told me to ask this person. Like, no one wanted to take the blame. Nobody wanted
ownership.
To take. Yeah. So
that's me. And sometimes just asking for forgiveness is, hey, I thought I had the ability and the authority to do this. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's do it. But you know what time it is? It is time for us to clock out of here today.
I don't know what. Is that a clock out? I don't know.
You just need to go back to your little swipey card that didn't make any noise.
Beep, beep. It probably made a beep noise.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to episode number 13. We are excited to be able to do this.
Make sure that you like, subscribe, share, tag your friends, tell them to listen.
Tell your grandma. I don't care.
Cashin The Check. Do grandmas listen to podcasts?
If you're a cool hip grandma, you probably listen to podcasts.
My parents do, I think.
Oh, and we're super thankful for we hit over 1,000 downloads a couple episodes ago.
Thank you to all you who listen.
And as always, our shout outs to Mark Farley for letting us do this. How I ever convinced him to hire me, it still blows my mind.
And Jeff Brown at the Biz Foundry. I actually told him that I had just left a job where the boss told me I was too aggressive. And Jeff he actually said we like aggressive here. So,
I love him.
There you go.
Well, we're checking out for the day.
All right. Cash that check. We'll see you later.